What in me is dark, illumine. What is low, raise and support. That to the height of this great argument I may assert eternal providence and justify the ways of God to man. Said Milton in his invocation to Paradise Lost, who was born when, I mean, 8 years before Shakespeare's death. Shakespeare, uh, writing almost, roughly quite a century ago, had said a very different thing. As flies to wanton boys are we to the gods, they kill us for their sport. Where in King Lear, the person saying this was Gloucester. Now, Shakespeare is the greatest writer in English literature. There is no denying the fact. Theories have come, theories have gone on canon formation, but Shakespeare remains. And then, if he is the greatest writer in English literature and one of the greatest of the world, his greatest performances are known to be the tragedies. I'm saying this with awareness of the critique and criticism of the idea of greatness in literature. In fact, I myself have worked on this. However, I am not convinced by the critics. There are reasons for it. Anyway, so tragedies are known to be the greatest achievements of Shakespeare by and large. Of late, there is a tendency, say last 15 to 20 years or a bit more, to read those texts which were little read or unread, like Troilus and Cressida, and bring them to prominence, which is good. But the basic fact remains, I'm a bit adamant here, that tragedies are the best achievements. Hamlet, Othello, Lear and Macbeth, King Lear and Macbeth. These four are the great tragedies. Sometimes we can add Antony and Cleopatra to it. And of these four tragedies, the crowning glory is King Lear. Now, in partial acknowledgement of these theories of rereading and critics, etc., today we'll try to read Lear from the point of view of, not ingratitude or a kind of misfortune or destiny or fate or Lear's folly, as it has been generally read. These, what I have said, these things form the central rhetoric of general discussions on King Lear. I will approach King Lear from a more materialistic perspective, which is, of course, it is there. And I think it is time we highlighted this. That is the problem of succession. And in this regard, just as in another regard, that of atheism or doubt, Shakespeare is much more advanced than Milton. In this regard, the act of succession, by act I do not mean law, but the activity, the fact, in his treatment of this activity of succession and problematizing it in different plays, not only in King Lear, Shakespeare in our prefigures Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. What is the major debate in King Lear actually? That is property, distribution of property, inheritance of property, paternal property. And I would say that for this single most important reason, Lear is still relevant today. Forget the other things. Because right to property, right to succession, these are ongoing debate still date. Just last month, Supreme Court of India had given a verdict that married women have all the rights to stay in their in-laws' house even while the divorce cases are pending. So this is just an example. So this shows that Lear in that, Shakespeare in King Lear raised an issue which is universal, which is perpetual, and which is related to the origin of capitalism actually. Shakespeare had not read Capital for the accident of history, but he anticipates it. The problem of succession is related to the origins of private property. If there is no private property, there is no succession. And patriarchy is also limited to the same fact, because in most of the societies, inheritance is patrilineal, father to their heirs, son or daughters, like that. Here, of course, daughters are there, but then greater trend is from father to their to his descendants. That is why our titles or surnames are also patrilineal. So, all these patriarchy and capitalism both are related to private property, actually. Anyway, so and then I would approach here Lear from the questions raised in the very first scene itself. And generally, in this kind of discussions, we skip that or gloss over that thing and go directly to Lear's division of kingdom between among his daughters. On the proviso that whoever loves him the most, shall get the biggest share, so on and so forth. It is, people have argued that this kind of a scene is improbable, but I don't say so. Fathers have been partial. Yes, Shakespeare made it visible and a little more dramatic by making Lear asking his daughters to profess their love for him. In actual life, that kind of dramaturgy is not there, but then it is often seen that parents also have their favorites. And of course, related with these is another burning problem of the day, that is, you know, the caring for the aged and the elderly, or what you call gerontological studies in literature. Lear is also important for that. The old fathers, Lear and then Gloucester, they are forsaken by their daughters and sons respectively. So why all these things happen? Why humanity or humanism is not there? The single most important answer is, from my reading of Lear, is the existence of private property. Now, this has been problematized by Shakespeare in the very first scene itself. This Earl of Gloucester has two sons, Edgar, the quote-unquote natural son, and Edmund, quote-unquote unnatural son or bastard. Now, how can a son or a daughter be unnatural? Whatever is born is natural. But the idea is that if the birth is not sanctioned by society, that is, a child is not born out of the wedlock, then illegitimate. Or the word for illegitimate child those days was bastard, which is more of a descriptive term then, but which is the root of it being used as a slang today. So you will see, even in Indian tradition, most of the abuses and vulgar abuses are related to one's birth. So again, patriarchy, distribution of property. And then, in many Hindi movies of the 60s and 70s, the dialogue was very common. Ek baap ka aulad hu. How can one be a son of too many fathers? Finally, it has to be one father biologically. So, but the meaning was that is, biological father and official father are the same. That is, the mother was honest, that kind of thing. So these are all mentalities based on ideas of culture which thrives on private property, and capitalism. Now, Edmund, who is Gloucester's quote unquote bastard son, is not recognized by the father naturally due to the compulsions of society as his true son, though indications are there that he loves him more than the other natural son. And then when we paint Edmund with dark color, yes, there are hints given. I mean, Shakespeare has given us the materials because, as I said in my video on Marlowe, they were popular playwrights. They could not go all the way against the popular judgments like Bernard Shaw could afford, because audience will not take the place then. So just as I think Shakespeare included a critique of colonialism in The Tempest even before it had started, he had included a criticism of this kind of succession and this kind of distribution of property, whether to natural sons and daughters through the story of Lear and his three daughters, or to quote unquote unnatural sons and daughters through the story of Edmund. Now, in the for the detailed reading, I will go to the text for a while. Now, in the first scene, we see Kent, that is the Earl of Kent, and Gloucester, actually the Earl of Gloucester, that is their peers. These two meet, and the third dialogue is by Kent. Is not this your son, my lord? This son is pun often in Shakespeare's plays, like in Hamlet, too much in the sun. So, or done, busy old fool, unruly son. There is a pun on son, possibly referring to James the First. So, then Gloucester replies, his breeding, sir, had been at my charge. Is full of sexual innuendos. Shakespeare was not a Puritan, neither a Victorian, so there was no problem. And Shakespeare's Body, there is a book also, if you want to know more. I have so often blushed to acknowledge him that now I am braced to it. Now that I no longer feel ashamed, but at one point of time I used to feel ashamed that yes, I am responsible for his birth. So he directly doesn't answer that he is my son. No, that I am responsible for his birth. A few years back there was a hue and cry about the illegitimate son of a leader. Since it is a political video, I don't want to name. Then DNA test and all were done. But those days, DNA test was not available, and in most cases people admitted but did not give them proper share of property. Then Kant says, I cannot conceive you. Again pun. It's a conceive means understanding, also conceive means to be pregnant. So a subtle male homoeroticism, as is common with Shakespeare, is being played out here. So Gloucester says, sir, this young fellow's mother could. That you cannot conceive me, but this fellow's mother could. Whereupon she grew round and wombed, and had indeed, sir, a son for her cradle, ere she had a husband for her bed. That is, you cannot conceive me, but the sons this fellow's mother could, and that is how her womb grew round, that is, she became pregnant. Very derogatory remarks for a woman. But we should not jump to conclusion to paint Shakespeare as a misogynist. Of course, Shakespeare cannot be a feminist for the accident of history. Remember, these are the dialogues of the people, not Shakespeare himself, and Shakespeare is possibly the most objective of all. Right? So he's giving all. So this is the language that the alls and all speak. Women, almost objectification of women. So in Hamlet's quote, frailty, thy name is woman. So radical feminists were angry with Shakespeare. So we should not read Shakespeare, burn Shakespeare, like burning Manu Samhita and all. But burning is not the solution. We will not reduplicate what Shakespeare is saying, but at the same time we must be aware of the cultural history of how we became what we became, and also remember that this is the frailty, thy name is woman, is a statement by Hamlet, not Shakespeare. Here also it is by Gloucester. So for her cradle ere she had a husband for her bed. Do you smell a fault? That is, do you, Gloucester is asking Kent, are you trying to find fault with me, or are you judgmental, as you say? Do you smell a fault? Also, fault meant female genitalia in this Elizabethan language. So I mean, this is just to give an example of how Shakespeare included the lewd and bawdy things in his plays. Now, see the problem. Now I'm coming to the core issue. A child, when it is born or being born, it doesn't know whether his parents are married or unmarried. Had it its choice, it won't have been born then. So what fault Edmund has done so that he is being castigated from the beginning by all members of the society as bastard or baseborn, illegitimate, etc. People do not have rights on their birth actually. I mean, do not have hands in their own birth. So that is the same thing, with caste system or racism. So it is absolutely cruel, inhumane to make fun of people for being born in quote unquote low race or quote unquote low families, etc., because these are all societal constructions, and histories of exploitations are related. So what I am trying to do in this video is, instead of giving a kind of summary of Lear, this is slightly from the point of view of thinking, because my addressees are general students, young students, colleagues know it all. So I'm trying to give you a position that look at the play from Edmund's point of view. He who has faced so many injustices, isn't he also a man more sinned against than sinning? This is Lear's dialogue in the play, mistakenly attributed to Shylock by students at times, but Lear says, I am a man more sinned against than sinning. But, you know, isn't it the same with Edmund? He conspires, he tries to dethrone his legitimately born brother Edgar, who is towards the later part of the play, increasingly shown to be the good person and the illegitimate to be the bad person, because as I said, Shakespeare had to finally, play to the gallery, as we say. But he has also included through the questions raised by Edmund that, you know, why he should not do what he was doing, because purely for an accident in which he has no hand, he was to be removed from his father's property, I mean dethroned, disinherited, and looked down upon in the society all through. That is what I want to submit here to. So this is, but then this is a bad son. Overall pattern is bad son, good son is Edgar. To the contrary, when now I come to the, so it is not for nothing that Shakespeare has introduced this at the first scene, I think. So it will stand you in good stead from research point of view, from understanding point of view, if you do not skip that part and go to Lear story directly, but also give your attention to Gloucester and his sons. Of course, this is juxtaposed to Lear and his three daughters, Gondril, Regan, and Cordelia. This is just for beginners. Here I'll summarize 2-3 things who may be interested. He asks which daughter loves him most so that he can carve out his empire accordingly. Gondril and Regan says that they love him more than anyone else in the world. Then Cordelia says she does not love Lear any more or less than her duty. And when he says that, how now, Cordelia, what sayest thou? The beginning. The next thing. Cordelia says, nothing, my lord. Then Lear says, nothing will come out of nothing. That if you say nothing, you will get nothing. Say that you love me, I'm the best person, and all this. Then Cordelia raises some valid question, where again I would say Shakespeare anticipates Freud. That is why, I'm a fan of Shakespeare. It's the root of everything, Marx, Freud, and all this. He says that, why did my sisters marry if they say that they love you all? I mean, their all love is for you. So they should have been with their father as their husband, is not it? So after you marry, definitely you must love your husband also. So the Freudian innuendo I'm saying is that Electra complex. Of course, Gondrel and Reagan did not have this complex. They were acting, they were showing, and but Lear wanted it, daughter's love. You know, very possessive father. So since I've said many serious things today, so to lighten the thing, Bollywood is also famous like Shakespeare. So some fathers are so possessive that lovers are also afraid. So we have song of Govinda, मैं तुझको भगा लाया हूँ तेरे घर से तेरे बाप के डर, that kind of thing. So Lear was that kind of a father. But he makes mistake, as all narcissistic persons do. He cannot identify true love from false love. So it is also a proof of the common saying that people who speak or say very sweet things are not good people. So from my next videos, I'll be very aggressive so that you think me to be a good person. Anyway, so Gondrel and Reagan said very sweet things. Lear divided the kingdom between these two. Cordelia said nothing, so she was banished. Actually, King of France married her, and the rest is history. Lear is then increasingly disempowered by both the daughters. He wanted to keep 100 knights, first reduced to 50 by one daughter, then it is said that he won't be allowed any, etc. etc. I'm not going to the details, but the theme is, or the lesson is, once you give away your powers, you lose the love or respect that you used to get from people due to that power. Those who loved you unconditionally will remain, like Kant, for example, or Gloucester, Cordelia, but they are very few in number. The world is full of Gonerils and Reagans, not of Cordelias. And even Lear is responsible for his tragedy. That is why, unlike what other people feel or say, I personally do not feel, so bad about Lear's tragedy, but definitely what touches me most is Cordelia's death. And I have experienced it myself in life, because I also speak the truth, or used to. So now I speak less, except academic things I don't speak. So if you speak the truth, Socrates was killed for speaking the truth by the same people mostly for whom he was speaking. So Cordelia's thing was same. For saying the truth or speaking the truth, she lost her life finally. Of course, the evildoers also died, but there is no poetic justice as such. By poetic justice, we mean that the evil or wrongdoers are punished and the honest are rewarded. There is no reward for the honest. Anyway, so when Lear gives away everything, he loses his power. He thought that by the very fact that he had given his daughters his kingdom, they will keep him loving all the more and then respecting, but that doesn't happen. So one practical lesson is part with what you have very carefully. Do not give away things till the last moment. That's why wills are done these days. After death, people will get such and such things. Even then, in some cases, persons are killed by inheritors. Lear are there till date. 2-3 years back, I read a story in newspaper in Calcutta. One son had sold his house or flat when the People who buyed it entered, they saw one room is locked and they broke it open and saw the father of the son there in the room locked. Like that. And they had escaped with that money to some country abroad. Anyway, so Lear is not at all unrealistic but very realistic. So finally the play in a way shows that Lear is a fool. I am going to read that quote. Then the fool in Lear, fool in Shakespeare in general are wise persons, not fools. It is like narods in our TV serials who appear to be comic but not comic. Why I said TV serials or cinema? Because the original image of narod in the scriptures is not exactly as is shown in serials and cinemas. These are more influenced by fool and clowns patterns in Shakespeare. So Lear says, "Dost thou call me fool, boy? Fool, all thy other titles thou hast given away, that thou wast born with." So we are all born as a fool, and that is without any knowledge, without any innocence, and we gather experience of life. But if we do not gather experience or do not learn from our mistakes, etc., we remain a fool. So the fool tells Lear this, that you should not have given away your rights to your daughters before your death. That is the practical lesson of the play. And then the philosophy. Finally, what emerges? I know people, critical people will look critically at this comment. Finally, I also, but this is for students. As finally means there is nothing final. There are many things, small letters. But finally, for students or generalists, there are two sayings in the play, and two groups of critics who debate on what is the play's final message. One group says that statement, "As flies to wanton boys are we to the gods, they kill us for their sports." Just as the young boys, they catch butterfly, dragonfly, tear them and kill them, they don't understand. So the gods there play with us like that. They are not affected by our sufferings. Some say that this is the final message, but others say that no, this is not the final thing. And the thing is, men must endure their going hence, even as their coming hither. Ripeness is all. That is, you must be experienced, or in today's popular word, matured. I don't like to use that word. Ripeness is all. In Hamlet, the message was readiness is all. That is, you must act. Because Hamlet is kind of tale of youth. Readiness is all, you must be ready to act. But by the time we come to Lear, Shakespeare seems to have, shared with us his own experience of life, his bitterness and other things. Video is already going to be of 30 minutes. I cannot upload it later. So I will talk, if possible, in another video anyway. So we must understand things. We must be open to understanding. So readiness is not all. The Hamlet hypothesis or thesis is rejected in Lear. Ripeness is all. You see, learn. See, observe, learn. And then intervene in such a way that it is meaningful. Making unnecessary interventions. Creating unnecessary controversy which leads to mass destruction like communal riot and all. These are not advisable. This is my own reading. Apropos of what is happening in France, you make acceptable interventions so that ultimately all mankind benefits. So ripeness is all. Here we find echo of Bacon. Read not to confute or contradict, but to weigh and consider. Just as you read books, if you don't read books, you read people. Shakespeare read people, as Ben Jonson says. And then weigh and consider. Lear could not, or Gloucester could not. Though I have given another reading of Gloucester, Edmund, in favor of Edmund in the way that is a different thing. But then both Lear and Gloucester, the so-called main plot and subplot, the so-called is a traditional rhetoric anyway, very traditional. What is sub and what is main, actually it's very difficult to say, Anyway, so both of them They fail to understand ripeness as well. And this also relates us to one of the dominant themes in traditional readings of Shakespeare, appearance and reality. It is very close to our Indian Advaita and Buddhist theory of Maya, that whatever you see is not real. Of course, while Advaita and Buddhism, or they say that there is some essential existence beyond this Maya, Shakespeare doesn't posit to some essential existence, but there are individual realities which we cannot get through our eyes, directly. You have to see through things. So Othello thought that Desdemona was unchaste. He killed her because appeared to be unchaste. She was not unchaste. So the conspirators, the criminals, will make you appear like a criminal before the world, or I mean others. You judge for your own. That is also a message that we get from Lear. That is my reading. So anyway, we end here today. This will not be directly beneficial as such for competitive exams, this lecture that I gave, but definitely for research and for understanding, for enriching life. Thank you very much.